Welcome to Conversations for the Good. Good morning, Dr. Jane.
Good morning, Anna. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing just fine. It's good to be together again.
Yes, it is. Our conversations so far have been focused on adults coping and staying healthy through this pandemic. We talked in an earlier episode about family relationships. I was hoping to touch upon what the children are experiencing, such as how they're coping, what are their cares and concerns in this ongoing crisis.
Well, Anna, as we take a kind of a bird's eye view into many homes over the last several months, we see huge transitions in how we work and how we play, how we attend school, and how we socialize. And of course, this has had a significant impact on the adults involved. But of course, the children in the households, are impacted as well. And in many cases, the impact is not just that it's been inconvenient; it's been painful because we've had situations where people have and families have experienced the loss of loved ones. There have been job losses, huge shift in household finances, being separated from family members, extended family, and also friends. So the angst and anxiety and uncertainty has also contributed to a lot of tension and less flexibility, and also an increase in emotional reactivity in the home environment.
Well, for many, the news of a vaccine in the near future has calmed some of the fear, but not all. And now the holidays certainly have provided additional situations where missing parts are glaring. Family gatherings suspended, traditions altered, and so many people are grieving the loss of loved ones in this crisis. Dr. Jane, the list goes on.
Yes, and so as we step into this current scenario, it's apparent that even with the new hope of a vaccine, we need to be open to the reality of the effects of the prolonged stress that we've been in, and that continues, and that it has produced, significant feelings of vulnerability.
Well, yes, and it seems far from over, but there is new hope.
Well, that's right. That's right. And hope has the potential to energize us, to kind of stay the course. However, hope is not a strategy. It can energize a strategy, but it can't replace a plan, a solid plan of action.
Yeah. Well, if the goal is to support the children, what makes a solid plan?
Well, Anna, I so often refer back to that analogy taken from pre-light safety instructions, and I think it's worth repeating. Apply the oxygen to yourself first before you start assisting others.
Yeah, so healthy support comes first from me, right?
That's exactly right. Yes, we can't give what we don't have. So, as we've discussed in earlier conversations, when we talked about relationships and families, we talked about how families operate as a system. And so, the health and wellness of each member of the family is going to affect the family as a whole. So, therefore, the self care is really the foundational step to maintaining awareness of ourselves so that we know what's happening and what's going on with me, but also what's happening with our children so that we can provide the most appropriate support.
So, how efficiently I'm operating as a result of my self care or lack of automatically affects the entire family. We've all been through this ordeal lasting several months
Yeah.
with more to come. What are the kids experiencing?
Well, in a typical household, what parents seem to be reporting is that there's an ongoing struggle in many cases, and sometimes an out and out battle to keep kids safe, to keep them healthy, to keep them occupied, and keep them current with school assignments. So many children also struggle with their own reactions. Keep in mind that children often find it very difficult to express their feelings. And often coping in the past has been to maybe visit with extended family or visit with friends as a way of kind of maintaining balance. So the social distancing has really prevented the customary social interaction. So and I can't stress strongly enough how this social interaction is so necessary for our growth and development as children. Social relationships, they build a sense of identity, a sense of self, belonging, and support. So it's important for that personal growth piece. And also in this mix is all the uncertainty of how this is going to play out. And some experts are actually warning that these limitations could cause anxiety and depression later on.
So it's really important that we keep children engaged with family and friends.
Absolutely. And encouraging ongoing connections via the formats of the internet, the phone, FaceTime, um, even online virtual games can be a lovely way to interact.
So I guess some parents were going to need to loosen the family rules on the amount of screen time for their children.
Well, Anna, yes, because the socialization process is really an imperative, and it's much much needed in these unprecedented times. To be able to kind of move with what's needed, and the flexibility is also so important. The old rules may not apply as well to the current situation, and that flexibility really supports resilience in the long run. And as always, parents need to schedule the internet online kind of activities for younger children, and always monitor and supervise activities for all minor children.
Well, given that, as you said, children can't always express their feelings, where are some signs that would indicate concern or even trouble?
Well, the most common problem with children, Anna, is anxiety, and it's a huge issue in this current situation. The internal fear and conflicts, it has many, many faces. Sometimes it appears similar across different age groups and stages of development. And at other times, it looks very, very different. The essential is that parents and caregivers need to know their child, need to know, is their child behaving differently? Often behaviors regress. It's kind of reverting back to more babyish or younger kinds of activities or behavior or reactions, of earlier stages. For instance, like when we look at preschoolers, thumb sucking. If thumb sucking has been prevalent all along, then it's like an increase in thumb sucking. But if it hasn't been an activity for a while, this is a behavior for comfort that children revert back to. Tantrums, bedwetting for preschoolers, clinging behavior, intense shyness, sometimes more, or I should say, more intense fear of the dark, withdrawn behavior. This all tends to be that regress behavior of preschoolers. And then as we move into elementary school, the regress behaviors can be just more babyish behaviors that hasn't been seen for a while, but also increased irritability, kind of volatile reactions, tearfulness, tantrums, a whole myriad of problems with concentration and attention, with school issues, avoiding class, avoiding friends. Um, Also, kind of a sluggishness can also be prevalent, and also nightmares in elementary school. And it comes from all the things that they're kind of in the background that they're hearing that really kind of blend into their own thinking and their own kind of inner processes. And then we have adolescence. And I'm just going to take a sip of coffee here. We have adolescence. And this is where we really begin to see some very, very deep disturbances. Sometimes it starts with something like sleep disturbance. They're not able to sleep, or they're sleeping seemingly all day. Appetite disturbances, weight loss, weight gain, more agitation, more frequent conflicts, outbursts, more complaints. And to some extent, as I'm saying this, it really is part of the adolescent teenage kind of a reactivity in many ways. And this is, again, it's also about just being able to track this. Is it more than usual? Sometimes the adolescent will stop doing the things that used to give them pleasure, or it'll show up in school performance or not being able to finish assignments or concentrate. Or sometimes it's an actual negative self statements. I'm too ugly. I'm too fat. I'm too this. I'm not good enough. I'm not deserving. And sometimes actual thoughts are expressed and feelings about suicide. And I want to take just a moment because we're not going to do a whole piece on this, but it is so incredibly important because suicide usually is prefaced by a change in mood and sleep patterns, withdrawal from friends, from again pleasurable uh, activities, and also it can be expressing helplessness and hopelessness, feeling like one's a burden, talking about dying or writing about dying or drawing or acting out in plays their own kind of compositions about dying. Some children talk about this openly, some children hide it. If you're seeing something, ask. It's always about put it out on the table. Put it out on the table. Let's make it real. So it's important to note that a child at any of these stages, um, that if they were having some of these symptoms prior to the crisis that we're in, they're going to be even more vulnerable to the negative impact of all the changes and all the demands that has come with the crisis.
These are serious issues and really breaks my heart to think of all the suffering that kids are experiencing, especially in homes with limited resources. What are some of the basics to keep in mind for parents and caregivers?
Some of the basics, include, and I'm going to start again with the self care. The caregivers and parents need to model and talk about and provide direction and encouragement for physical activities and exercise, healthy nutrition, healthy sleep patterns, uh, a balance of work and play. You know, Caregivers can actually demonstrate breathing for relaxation. We have this wonderful video early on in our quieting technique, the welcoming breath. Share that with your kids. It's age appropriate at any age. I was just looking at a video the other night where this little bitty, he probably was maybe 3 or 4, this little boy telling his younger sister that she was obviously very, very tearful in the moment. And he was telling her to take a nice deep breath. And I thought, someone has demonstrated this for him. And he's willing to share it with this other little tyke, in the video. It was just absolutely darling. Younger children can actually place a stuffed toy on their abdomen as they're lying down, and they can watch with the in breath and the out breath how that little stuffed animal rises and falls with each breath. It can be enormously relaxing.
That's so sweet. So they can begin to slow the movement down and watch it happen.
That's
That's a,
right.
that's a perfect place to begin.
That's right. It's also, in talking about, how we can support our kids. It's also about providing creative outlets, encouraging creative activities, try new things, arts and crafts, science projects, musical activities, board games. All of these can be enormously helpful during these times. And the other piece is don't be afraid to talk about COVID. Convey the facts in an age appropriate manner. Correct misinformation. Stay focused on what's possible if we make healthy choices. Be reassuring. And it's
Yeah.
also about letting your children's questions be your guide. Children are often confused. They don't need elaborate explanations. Stick with the facts. This is about lessening their fears. And sometimes they just need a few words to get back to that balance. The other piece is, as caregivers and parents, acknowledging our own anxiety and our own unsettledness, learning practices that can help us balance ourselves, help us relax and focus and become more aware to help manage it. And also sharing these practices with our children. The focus is staying safe and sharing that what that means to us to the kids.
Keeping it real and out in the open.
That's right. And I can't express how important. I mean, I can't express in enough of how keeping routines is so incredibly important during this time. Getting up at the same time, eating at the same times, bedtime. Consistency and structure can be enormously calming, especially for younger children. They're the ones who tend to want more than. Well, but I also have to say the older children too, especially if there's any angst or anxiety. They really want and benefit from knowing what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. Get the family involved. Post the schedule, review it at the beginning of each day. This is incredibly important. And it also allows us that come together time in the consistency to be more aware of symptoms of stress, and also, are there symptoms of trauma? We've talked about that in earlier episodes. They show up initially as behavioral changes, as we've just mentioned. So it's about also limiting access to negative news feeds and social media. Let's keep the negativity, at a low, low level, given all the other things that are going on.
Dr. Jane, this is a good suggestions for adults as well. I want to be informed, but sometimes the news is overwhelming and feeds into angst and anxiety.
Well, I agree, Anna. It does. And that's why we need to also stay close to our social network, and especially those friends and family members who can be supportive. Okay. And it's also important to encourage our children to do the same thing, whether it's Skype or FaceTime, or playing games online, as I mentioned. It's also working as a team um, to maintain the household and tasks, but to do fun activities together as well. And also to stay connected to the school staff, keep open communication, communicate with other families in the school system. This can also be important. And also reaching out for help. You know, ask your physician or the school counselor if you need a referral. It's out there, it's available.
Yeah. Well, these are all good common sense tips to tune into what's happening with our precious younger generation and to give them the support and reassurance that we all need.
That we all need, Anna. Yes.
Well, thank you, Dr. Jane. Until our next conversation.
I look forward to it, Anna. Thank you.